guys, it's Gabriela and Giancarlo, and in today's video, we are going to take a closer look to the coupling of the American mind. As you already know, this book, written by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, shows how three great untruths and the policies and political movements that draw on them are causing problems for young people, universities, and more generally, liberal democracies. In the previous chapters, which are chapter 1, 2, and 3, we saw that it was said the statement. They gave us the intellectual tools we need to make sense of the new culture of safety that has swept across many college campuses since 2013. And in those chapters, there was also explained some of the key concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy, and they show how CBT improves critical thinking skills while counteracting the effects of the great untruths. But now it is time to move on and see in chapter 4, which is called Bad Ideas in Action, um, uh, Intimidation and Violence, we will examine the shoutdowns, the intimidation, and occasional violence that are making it more difficult for universities to achieve their core missions of education and research. So, we will see the popular idea that states that speech is violence, and we will show why thinking this way is bad for students' mental health.
Okay, well, hi guys. My partner told you we are going to talk about chapter 4, intimidation and violence. And well, basically, this chapter is about some protests that happened in 2017 in the Berkeley University. The causes for this was the presentation of a conference of this guy, Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a guy more closely, let's say, to the conservative broad Trump ideas in the United States. And the thing is what they try to be censorship for some students and residents in that place, and who was part of the group Antifas, which is how you know the anarchist and maybe communist groups, and who could be maybe a bit extremist. Let's say that the main idea of this chapter is that the speech is violence, but it is more like a question. A not a sentence, let's say. The thing is that, according to the author, many students on the left, on the political left, have become increasingly receptive to the idea that violence is often justified as a response to speech that believe that is hateful. In this case, it happened with with the speech of Yiannopoulos, and this happened in another occasion in some other universities with, for example, Ben Shapiro, who is another guy more closely to the conservative ideas, who's the right ideas, and who is we are going to talk about in the next thing. Another factor which is very important to the author in this chapter is the incompetence of the authority. According to the author, the incompetence of the university and the police authority, the government authority, show that violence works. Let's say that it can give a wrong message of the person, of the students. And for example, for the Antifa activists, they respond with violence in the same campus. And this is a problem for them. The other thing is that words are violence and violence is safety. The author mentioned this kind of argument. If Milo Yiannopoulos is allowed to speak, I might lose my right to exist. Therefore, violence is justified. This is a kind of justified for say that, well, if your speech is violence, I can self-defend myself for protect the other person, for protect the minorities in this case of your speech. And this is a thing that we will say because the author is not agree with the term that speech is violence. Another factor is the dichotomy. For example, you must pick a side. you are either with us or against us. And this is the untruth that we say in the last chapters. And when, for example, they say that life is a battle between good people and evil people. If I'm good, because I think that I'm good, I suppose that you are wrong. And if you are wrong, you are attacking me. In how you attack me, I have the right to defend myself. And in this case, the defend myself is attacking to you. The other thing is the speech hard emotions. For the author, students, professors, and activists are labeling their opponents' words as violence, and they give themselves permission to engage in ideological, motivated physical violence. This is the untruth that always trust your feelings. If your feelings say that you are being attacked, I suppose that you are right, you are being attacked, and you have the right to defense with violence, to respond with violence with the other persons. And the other thing is about the cognitive distortion. As you can remember, I suppose, in the last exposition, in the last presentation, we talk about the discussion because it's very important. It's very important because some students have emotional reasoning, has more catastrophism, some dichotomous thinking, reading, labeling, etc. And the author, in this case, in this chapter, made a kind of analogy with the book 1984, with the Orwellian reality, in which the same person, the same, let's say, people, try to censorship between them for the dictatorship motivations. And according to the statistics, almost 1 in 5 students survived in 2007 public institutions. Students agreed that using violence to prevent a speaker from speaking was acceptable. It is that 30% of students agreed with this statement. And this is bad news for the author. And in the part of the terms, the author said that white supremacy is used in an ultra athletic and recreational way. And it means that some Afro-Americans have been called white supremacists. In this case of the book, we talk about McWhorter, who is a conferencist more close to the conservative ideas. Well, maybe not conservative ideas, more close to the critical opinion about some anti-racist ideology, who has been called racist and even white supremacy. And the other example is Thomas Sowell in the United States too. He is a liberal economist who is called like a traitor of the black people. And in the national example, we have, for example, in the right spectrum political, Apollo Paul.
Okay, a similar case regarding shutdowns, intimidation, and violence as we saw in Berkeley happened also in Charlottesville, Virginia. On the night of August 11, 2017, members of the self described alt right, including many neo Nazis and Ku Klux Klansmen, marched across the fabled grounds of the University of Virginia, carrying tiki torches and chanting neo Nazis and white supremacist slogans. And all this background gets us to a very important question: why it is such a bad idea to tell students that words are violence. So, according to the surveys we described earlier, most students opposed the use of violence. People who agree with that reach just 1%. However, there is a much larger group, about 20 to 13%, that is willing to support others, students, who use violence. And the most common justification is that hate speech is violence, and some students believe it is therefore legitimate to use violence to shut down hate speech. But at this point, the author focuses all his attention in the physical consequences of thinking in this way. So, if we assume that we have the right to use violence to shut down hate speech, we are also assume that that action affects us, and they do can affect people with different social identities. So it is really necessary make distinctions between what is harm and what is violence. In order to do that, the authors take a quote posted in the New York Times, written by Lisa Feldman Barrett, who says, If words can cause stress, and if prolonged stress can cause physical harm, then it seems that speech, at least certain types of speech, can be a form of violence. However, the authors in an essay posted weeks later in The Atlantic not accept the claim that harm, even physical harm, is the same as violence. So they said, if words can cause stress and stress can cause harm, then words can cause harm. That statement according to Lisa. But that doesn't establish that words are violence. So it is really necessary to see the differences. And in order to reinforce that statement, it is said that if we keep distinction between speech and violence, then many more options are available for us, not just violent reactions. The first option is that we can take the stoic response and develop our ability to remain unmoved. And the second option that we have is that after we reject the speech is violence view, we can use our opponent's ideas and arguments to make ourselves stronger. We are going to take a deep look in these two options in class, so see you then, guys.